Victory, how you guys doing this morning? So good to see you guys. Welcome out to Victory. I'm excited to be here this morning. How many people are excited to be here today? Awesome. Do you like the person you're sitting next to this morning? Do you like them? Just turn next to you and do an inventory. I got two ladies over here. They're sitting by themselves. Somebody needs to fix that. Somebody sits on that row. But you like who you're sitting next to? Is it pretty good? I mean, some of you guys, you're married, so you better. You know, the answer is yes, okay? Make sure you get that right. Turn to your neighbor this morning and say, I'm so happy to be sitting next to you this morning. Okay, some of you guys were not sincere and it shows, okay? You need to work on your poker face. You go, I'm so happy to sit next to you. I don't know about you, but I'm happy to be in the room with you this morning. I am really excited to be here today. This is part 6 of our core values series, 6 out of 8. And we've looked at different core values that make Victory who we are. The first week we looked at Jesus. It's who we're about, the most important thing. The next one is love. We want to live like love. The next one after that was fun. Being a Christian could be a good time. Everyone say, woo! We looked at giving. We want to be generous and turn heads with preposterous generosity. Last week we looked at honor. We honor in every direction without exception. And this week we want to look at go. Everybody say go with me. Go. Awesome. The subtitle beneath go, you guys probably can't read it on my shirt, but it's we move forward. We move forward. As a church, we're not content to stay where we're at. As a church, we're moving forward. In our relationship with God, we're moving forward. Everywhere, we're moving forward. We move forward. We break new ground. We break new ground. We're not content to do the same things that we've always done, the same way we've always done them. And finally, we create momentum. We move forward, we break new ground, and we create momentum. That's what going is about. And it's so important for us at Victory to be a church on the move. It's so important. So I want to break down each one of these categories for a second, because I want us to understand that it's not just biblical, but it's very practical. It's very important for us to do these things. So moving forward, we need to move forward. Everyone say move forward. Move forward. Look at your neighbor this morning and say, you need to move forward. I'll look back at him and say, no, seriously, I don't want you sitting next to me, move a row up. You need to move forward. It's so important. I was reading an article this past week about the Titanic, okay? My heart will go on, Celine Dion, Jack and Rose, all that nonsense, right? And by the way, that door was definitely big enough for the both of them. She was selfish. She was selfish, 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 selfish. But I was reading an article about the Titanic, and the Titanic is sitting at the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean, and they just sent a submarine down there, and they've discovered that the Titanic is literally disintegrating. It's turning into dust at the ocean floor. And what they've discovered is that there's all kinds of bacteria and things down there that are eating away at this ship. And I want you to understand, this ship is massive. It's made out of iron. It's made out of metal. Like, this thing was built to last. And when it was built, it was the largest ship ever created. At the time, if I'm not mistaken, it was the largest man-made anything at that time. This thing is huge. It was built to last. In fact, there's no reason why the Titanic shouldn't still be in one piece, because I grew up in California, and there's a ship called the Queen Mary that is roughly about the same age as the Titanic and similar in size, though not quite as large. And it's still out there in California. You can go and get on it and spend the night there. They've turned it into a hotel, all this stuff. But I started thinking about how interesting it is that a ship that was so massive and so powerful that what they said when it was created was that not even God could sink this ship. We know how that turned out. Turns out all it took was a little bit of ice. But that this ship that God himself wasn't even supposed to be able to sink, that it's now sitting on the bottom of the ocean floor and it's actually turning into dust. And I started thinking about why. The reason why is because the Titanic was never designed to sit at the bottom of the ocean floor. It was not designed to be stationary, and church, neither were you. You were never designed to be stationary, and when you're not moving forward, you're prone to decay. When you're not moving forward, you're prone to becoming sedentary. And I was looking up because I think we can all acknowledge that, like, we're kind of slowing down as a species. Am I right? Like, we're not as physically active as previous generations. Am I right? Some of you, you're at an age where you can remember that, the day-to-day things, that we take for granted now are a lot more difficult. Like back in the day, you used to have to cook over an oven. There was no other option. And now we have microwaves and cooking takes seconds, Everything's gotten faster. I remember talking to my great-grandfather when I was a boy, and he was born in 1903 in Austria. And I remember having conversations with my great-grandfather, and he told me about the time that he saw a car for the first time when he was a child. Like, I met somebody that saw a car for the first time. Like, that's not that far back. Like he didn't know cars existed until he was out in the world and saw one, because everybody got around by horse and carriage. But now we take cars for granted, and to think of a world where cars don't exist is completely alien to us, where my great-grandfather, somebody that I met, grew up in a time where that wasn't an option for them. It's insane to think about, isn't it? But everything is getting faster and faster. Everything's getting easier and easier. And because of that, we're moving less and less. And I was reading an article about the epidemic of sedentary lifestyles that's taking place particularly in developed countries. And I want you to listen to this. I just want to read this passage of the article to you really quick because it was so fascinating. It says, over the last 100 years, there's been a large shift from manual labor jobs like farming, like manufacturing, like building, things of that. There's been a shift away from that to office jobs. So people are leaving physical jobs and moving more and more to office jobs. We're spending more time in front of a computer than we are behind a saw. In 1960, there was a decline of jobs requiring moderate physical activity from 50% down to 20%. And at that time, 1 in 2 Americans had a physically demanding job. In the 1960s, 1 in 2 Americans had a physically demanding job. In 2011, the ratio is 1 in 5. 1 in 5. In the 1960s, while many of us were alive at that time, in the 1960s, 1 in 2 had a physically demanding jobs. In your grandparents' work in the time frame of when your grandparents were in the workforce, 1 in 2 had a physically demanding job, and now it's 1 in 5. The study goes on and it says that from 1990 to 2016, there was a decrease of about 1/3 in manual labor jobs and employment. In 2008, the National Health Interview Survey found that 36% of adults were inactive. 36% of adults were inactive in 2008. It goes on and says that 60% of adult respondents never participated in vigorous physical activity lasting more than 10 minutes a week. 60% of adults did not participate in vigorous physical activity that lasted more than 10 minutes per week. That means we're getting like zero exercise. Like you guys run to the bathroom when you gotta go and that's it, Like you guys are like, I do 1 sit-up every day. I sit up in the morning and I sit back down at night, Like that's the extent of our physical exercise. We're sedentary. It goes on to say that according to a 2018 study, office workers typically spend 70 to 85% of their work day sitting down. 70 to 85% sitting down. The estimated total sitting time increased from 2007 to 2016 from 7 hours among adolescents to 8.5 hours among adolescents. So in just 9 years, kids went from sitting 7 hours a day to 8.5 hours a day. And adults went from 5.5 hours a day to 6.5 hours a day in a span of 9 years. This is a sedentary lifestyle. We're not moving as much as we used to. We're sitting down a lot more. Now, there's nothing wrong with relaxing. I'm not trying to make anybody feel guilty, particularly if you have an office job or whatever. I'm trying to get us to understand that culturally, as life becomes easier, we're tending to move less. And I think that there's a direct correlation between that and the spiritual. Yeah. I think spiritually, the Church of Jesus Christ, as we get further and further away from the advent of Christ, I think that we're moving less and less. I was looking at some statistics in the church. 95% of all Christians have never won a soul to Christ. That means there's probably somewhere in the neighborhood of maybe 200 to 250 people in this room right now. That means if you take all the people in this room, there is somewhere in the neighborhood of 10 to 15, perhaps at the absolute maximum, people that have won somebody to Christ. Out of this entire room, you could take 10, 11, 12 people out of everybody in this room that's actually won somebody to the Lord. 80% of all Christians do not consistently witness for Jesus. That means the vast majority of everybody in this room does not consistently tell people about God. Maybe you do once a year. Maybe you do every once in a blue moon, but you're not doing it consistently. It's not a habit of yours. Less than 2% are involved in the ministry of evangelism. Listen, Jesus called all of us to be evangelistic. He called all of us to tell people the good news, but less than 2% are actively involved in the ministry of evangelism. 71% do not give financially towards financing the Great Commission. We're not giving to missions. We're not giving to evangelism. And the average church reaches one person for Christ per year. The average church in America reaches one person for Jesus per year. I want to let you know people are dying at a faster rate than they're being saved in the church. Listen, there is a huge number of churches every year that close their doors because people are dying off in their congregation and no one is being added. I was speaking to a friend of mine, and he inherited a church that had been around for 60 years because the congregation had nearly entirely died off. And so they just gave him the church. They're like, we have this building, everything's paid off, all this stuff, but nobody else is coming in. And so they had to give the church away. That's a church that had become sedentary. A sedentary lifestyle is also heavily linked to increases in risk of depression and anxiety. If you're somebody that doesn't move very often and you struggle with depression and anxiety, it's actually medically proven that you getting out and going for a jog will help you overcome anxiety and depression. It's actually proven that you going to the gym will help you overcome depression and anxiety. It's actually proven that you just getting out and being around people will lift your spirits. The problem is a lot of times when we're struggling with depression and anxiety, we close ourselves off from people and we become sedentary. We lock ourselves in our room, we sit in front of a TV, and then we just feel worse about ourselves. When what we really need to do is to go. It's to go. It's to get around something. The same thing is true of us in our spiritual lives as well. We need to go. If sedentary lifestyles in the practical lead to depression and anxiety, it bears to reason that a sedentary lifestyle in the spiritual has negative effects as well. Are you with me? It bears to reason, the reason why you're feeling discouraged. You ever feel discouragement as a Christian? Perhaps it's because you're not moving forward. And you're looking at everybody else and they're going on and they're accomplishing things for God and they're reaching people and you see that their life is prospering, their marriage is doing well, and you become discouraged because you're staying stuck. It's possible that we experience burnout. Has anybody ever been burnt out as a Christian? I want to let you know, if you're moving forward, it's harder to get burnt out than if you're standing still. A lot of times we think, I'm getting burnt out because I'm doing too much. No, you're probably just doing things in the wrong direction. Are you with me? And what I've seen is the people that are passionate about God and passionately pursuing the things of God and passionately moving forward never get burnt out. And I want to tell you, for me as a Christian, I have days where I get tired, but I have never been burnt out as a minister of the gospel because I am moving towards Christ. And the Bible tells us that times of refreshing come from the Lord. And so if I'm going to get burnt out, I'm going to get burnt out when I'm moving away from God, because when I'm moving towards Him, He's going to supernaturally fill my cup. And He's going to put so much over into it that it floods out the side and begins pouring into other people. So if you're feeling burned out, I want to encourage you to just move a little bit closer to the cross, because there is life and newness found there. Sometimes we get detached from people because other people are moving forward in their relationship with God and we're not, and then we feel like they're a million miles away. We need to be moving forward with them. Sometimes we can get critical because we see other people moving forward and we're not prepared to go where they're going, and so we stay still, and it causes us to get judgmental and critical of other Christians instead of us joining them and running towards the cross. Sedentary lifestyle is damaging both physically and spiritually. It literally leads to death. And it leads towards people not hearing the gospel of Jesus Christ. It's funny because when we talk about church growth, like there's a lot of people here today. When we think about church growth, we think, the church needs to advertise, the church needs to hand out flyers and all this stuff. You want to know statistically where the majority of church growth comes? It comes from somebody inviting you. It comes from a friend inviting a friend. How many people are here today because somebody invited you? Can I see some hands? You're here because somebody told you about God. You're here because somebody told you about this church. There's a lot of hands going up. These people wouldn't be here if somebody didn't go. But here's the problem, church. We're not evangelizing, the cults are. You got Mormons and Jehovah's Witnesses that are hitting the streets every single day to preach a lie. Why is it so difficult for us to go and preach the truth? Listen, we know they're out there too. You know, like them witnesses be at your door every Tuesday. And you know, and your spouse knows, and you know that y'all about to have a fight if she opens the door for some witnesses. They're knocking, you're like, baby, don't you dare touch that door. Stay away from the blinds. They can sense the blinds moving. Don't even look out that window, man. They got a nose for that. They will not leave if they sense that we're in this room. You guys get really quiet. You cover your baby's mouth. It's like you guys in a World War II movie and there's a bad guy, like there's an alien or predator outside your door. You're like, don't say anything. Where are they gone? You know, Mormons, that every young Mormon man, generally speaking, volunteers a year of their life to be a missionary. Every Mormon young man volunteers a year of their life after they get out of school to be a missionary. And we have difficulty being a missionary at our workplace. Are you with me, church? Why is it so hard to go? And I want to let you know, us doing something with this commission that we've been given is vitally important to God. There's a story in the Bible, it's the parable of the talents, and I don't want to read it to you, but just to briefly recap, a master goes away and he leaves 3 servants with sums of money. And 2 of the servants invest the money and they have a return to give to their master, but the 3rd servant doesn't do anything with it. When the master comes back, he's like, yo, I didn't do anything because I know that you're a hard master and I didn't think I could please you anyways. And the interesting thing to me is that the master looks at his servant and he calls him wicked and evil. And that always blew my mind because all this servant did for the master to call him wicked and evil was nothing. That's all he did. He simply did nothing. See, I think a lot of times as Christians, we look at actions and call actions evil. We're like, I'm not evil because I don't murder anybody. I've never cheated on my spouse. I've never stolen. I've never done anything like that. And so we push it off and say, well, that's wicked and evil. But the master's looking at you and saying, but I called you to reach the lost. And you're standing on the shore of the beach and you know how to swim and you got a life raft in your hand and you're observing somebody drowning and you're not doing anything about it and you allow them to drown. That's wicked and evil. It's about use. It's about movement. It's about doing what God created you to do. In Matthew chapter 4, verses 19, Jesus is speaking to the disciples and they're sitting in a boat and they're fishing. And Jesus calls to them, he says, follow me. Everyone say, follow me. Follow me. He says, follow me and I'll make you fishers of men. What is the phrase follow me if not a call to movement? What is the phrase follow me if not Jesus saying, go? See, he came upon these men and they were sitting in their boats. Y'all like fishing? Anybody like fishing? Just sitting in the boat, throwing the line, throwing the nets. They're sitting there and they're just sitting there and they're pulling in fish and they're repeating the process and they're repeating the process. And Jesus looks at them and says, you know what? You're more than the fish that you catch. I want you to get up out of your boat. Stop being sedentary. Stop being still. Stop doing the same thing day in, day out. Get out of your boat and come and follow me. And I'll teach you to fish for something more valuable than what you've been fishing for in the past. And you don't have to be content or satisfied to continue to pursue the frivolous things that you've been pursuing up until this point, because I'm going to give you something worthwhile. I'm going to give you something significant. I'm going to give you a purpose and a name and an identity and a calling. So just get out of your boats and follow me and I'll make you fishers of men. And church, you know what's killing the church in America today is those that are called out of their boats to be fishers of men who instead cling to their nets and settle for being fishers of fish. It's killing the church. God's coming to you. He's saying, hey, get out of your seat. Come and join me. Hey, I want you to get out of your comfort zone. Hey, I want you to stop spending so much time on Netflix. Are you with me? I want you to stop spending so much time binge watching your latest show. I want you to stop spending so much time fishing at the pier. I want you to get out and I'll make you a fisher of men. And you're watching shows about people, but I want to connect you to people, and I want you to make a difference in their lives. This life is not about being entertained. This life is about making a difference. So come out and follow me. You need to move forward from where you found yourself. When Jesus finds you, he should not return to find you in the same spot. You should get out and be moving forward alongside of him. We read in Luke chapter 9, verses 59 through 60. All these people are talking to Jesus, and in verse 59 it says, Jesus turned to another and said, come. Everybody say come. What is come? It's movement, isn't it? Come, it's movement. If I go up to you, Christian, I'm like, hey, Christian, come with me. What am I asking him to do? I'm saying, hey, listen, don't be still any longer. I got a journey, and I want you to join me. I want you to join me on the journey, so get up and let's move forward. Come. And Jesus goes to this man and says, come, be my disciple. He's calling you out of your life and where you find yourself to be what he has called you to be. You could be something else, but he's saying, I want you to be a disciple, so come. It's time to move forward. See, you've been there for far too long, and I'm telling you to come. And the man replied, and I want you to listen to the man's reply because I think that we can hear ourselves in this man's response. Please, I want you to think about it. Have you ever answered God in a similar fashion? He says, come, follow me, be my disciple. And the man says, someday I will. Someday I will. You ever told that to God? Someday. Some of you, you're living in your someday right now. Hello? You're living in your someday right now. God is calling you. But our response is, God, someday, God, someday. You know what that is? That's procrastination. That's that sedentary lifestyle. Man, God found me, and I'm sitting down, and it feels so good. And he's calling me, and it sounds good, but you know what? Sitting down is so comfortable. Being stationary is so familiar. So God, someday. The problem with someday is that someday never shows up because tomorrow is always a day away. All you ever have is today. So you have a choice to be who God's called you to be now or to keep on putting it off to tomorrow. But I promise you, you're lying to yourself when you say someday. You're lying to yourself when you say someday. I want to let you know, I don't think that many Christians would look in the face of Jesus and say no. But we will say someday. We will say someday because someday is a polite way of saying no. Someday is a lie because we convince ourselves that someday is going to show up, but in reality, God's going to move from you to somebody that's ready to go. And you're going to miss your opportunity to be the difference maker that God called you to be because you're waiting on a someday. He says, someday I will, Lord. Everybody say, someday. But allow me first to fulfill my duty as a good son and wait. Do you hear what he's saying? Someday, but for now I'm going to wait. That's more sedentary language. That's more stationary language. Someday, but now I'm going to wait. Listen, waiting can be sustained by some days. The enemy will use your someday and your wait to make sure you never go. He says, let me wait until my father passes away. I love this because the Bible doesn't give us any context for how old his dad is. You know what I mean? His dad could have 1 foot in the grave. It could be a matter of hours. But more than likely, this is an average age man with an average age father, and there's some serious time ahead of him. His dad's in his 40s. His dad's I'm good. We're ready to go. In fact, in Jesus' time, he could be even talking about what we would consider to be a teenager because they became men at the age of 13. So he could be talking to a 14-year-old. It's hey, listen, I'm going to wait when my dad dies. Your dad just had you. You know what I mean? Your dad jogs every morning and eats vegetables. He's going to be fine. But he's someday. Listen, if you're waiting on something, listen, this young man, I promise you, that thing that is stopping you from going and pursuing what God's called you to do, something else will take its place when it comes. You're waiting for your dad to pass away. Your dad passed away, you're like, oh, now I got to wait for my mama. And now I got to wait for my dog. And now I got to wait for this. And now I got to wait for that. And every excuse that you craft, another suitable excuse will come and take its place. I got to wait until my kids are a little bit grown because I don't want to be dragging them to church all the time. Well, then your kids are going to be grown. You're going to have grandkids. Are you listening? I got to wait until I get a little bit more financially stable. Well, you get a little bit more financially stable, and then you make some more bad decisions, and now you're unstable again. Are you with me? There's always something. The enemy's good at making sure that one step leads to the next, to the next, to the next, and every step leads you away from your calling. And Jesus told him, don't wait for your father's burial. Let those who are already dead wait for death. You know what he's saying? The world is filled with lost people. Let a lost person bury your father. What I want you to do is I want you to go and save the lost because that's what I'm about. And you're talking about your father's death in the natural, but I'm talking about infinite numbers of people's deaths in the spiritual and the eternal. And I am calling you out of your boat to stop fishing for fish and start fishing for men. You're waiting for your dad and you're worried about his well-being, but I have called you to reach numerous people's fathers so that they can join them in eternity. And I need you to step out of the boat for a second and go with me to fish for some men. He said, don't wait for your father's burial. Let those who are already dead wait for death. But as for you, go. Everybody say go. Go. As for you, go and proclaim. What does that mean? It means go and do. Go and do. Stop being sedentary. Stop being stationary. Go and do. Everywhere that God's kingdom has arrived. I want you to go and proclaim everywhere that God's kingdom has arrived because there are lost people that need to be found. Listen to me, church. The biggest bottleneck to the gospel is people who refuse to move when God's called them to go. The biggest bottleneck to the gospel is people. We like to blame the enemy for more than is his fault. Are you with me? Oh, the devil's just coming against me, man. The devil's really stopping me. The devil this, the devil. No, it's you. It's you. You're not going when God's called you to go. And you can say everything is the devil's fault and just putting the blame off on him. But in reality, God's called you to go. God, listen to me, the enemy does not stop you from witnessing to your relatives. Your pride does. Are you listening? Your enemy is not plugging the ears of your auntie so that she won't hear the gospel. Listen, you're just not saying anything. He doesn't even need to plug her ears because you're doing his job for him by never reaching her with the gospel in the first place. But we make all these excuses for why we can't go, and then we just get insecure because we're looking at everybody else and they're moving forward and we're not. And then we're like, well, why even bother? I'm never going to reach people like Pastor Larry does. Why even try? Listen, I want to let you know something this morning, church. You got to get over that because you don't measure your race by the pace of your neighbor. You measure your race by your forward progress. It's not a competition, it's a calling. You're called to move forward. You're called to move forward. Don't worry about what somebody else is doing. That's why the Apostle Paul said, forgetting what lies behind me, not looking to the left or to the right, but only at what lies ahead. I press onward. I'm moving forward to my upward calling, which is Christ Jesus. I don't care what my neighbor's doing. I don't care what I did in the past. I don't care about my yesterdays. All I care about is moving forward. And that's what we need to be obsessed about as well, is moving forward. I'm sick and tired of being stationary, and I'm ready to do whatever it takes to move forward. You know what, recently there was a man in the church that came up to me, and I'm not trying to put him on blast or anything, but he came up to me and was like, Pastor, I know that God has a calling on my life. I know that God has a purpose for my life, and I've been standing still for way too long. I am ready to move forward. So I want you to disciple me. I want you to pour into me, and whatever you tell me to do, I will do because I'm done being stationary and I want to go. And so I was like, okay, cool. And so I'm like, I'm going to test him. Sometimes I do that, guys. Like sometimes I'll be testing you guys. I'm like, I'm gonna test them. I'm like, oh, you said you'll do whatever I tell you to do because you want to move forward? He's like, yes, anything. You know, and I know he's thinking like, oh, point me at a demon, I'll cast it out, and all this stuff. And I'm like, well, that's cool because there's an old lady in church that needs her lawn cut. Can you cut her lawn? I'm fully expecting a no. Like full disclosure, I'm like, a time. But you know what he says? I'll do it under one condition. And you know what I said? Or what I thought, rather? I'm thinking, okay, here it is, right? Under one condition. What's the condition? What are your terms? You want to get paid? What's it about? And he says, I'll do it under one condition. I want you to tell me 3 people that need their lawn cut because I don't want to settle for just doing 1. I want to go further. I don't want to just do the bare minimum. I want to go above and beyond. So I'll do it if you give me 3. That caught my attention. I was like, okay, this is pretty interesting. Maybe this is somebody that's ready to move forward. You know what happened the next day? He calls me. He's like, Pastor, I have a lawnmower, but I don't have a way to get it to these people's houses. Can you arrange for somebody to pick up the lawnmower? And if you can arrange somebody to pick up the lawnmower and take it to the house, I'll cut the yards. I'm like, okay, man, no problem. I can do that. That's easy. I'll call some people with a truck. We'll set it up. No problem whatsoever. I'm excited you're going to go and do this. 10 minutes after I get off the phone, he calls me back up. He's like, Pastor, I need to ask for your forgiveness. I shouldn't have asked you to find transportation for me to get the lawnmower to people's house because you told me to do it. And when you told me to do it, it became my responsibility. And by me asking you to arrange transportation for it, I took what you gave me to do and I put it back on your shoulders. And that's not what I should be doing. What I should be doing is when I take something on myself, I need to be the one that moves forward. And I need to be the one that makes the moves. And I need to be the one that makes it happen. So don't worry about arranging transportation. I got it covered. I'll figure it out. That's incredible, you guys. I'm so proud of that. And I just want to take a second to honor that for a second. I want to show a picture, you guys. This is Ronnie from our church, and he went and mowed Pastor Omar's lawn, and I'm not joking. It's the tallest grass I've ever seen in my life. I don't know what Pastor Omar's feeding it. He's out there just putting like fertilizer and mulch on it all day long, but that stuff was like a jungle. Like Ronnie's cutting the grass, and panthers are walking out like, I guess I have to find a new forest. I don't know what's going on. Like little critters, raccoons are like, come on, you know? They're living in it. He had to go do it twice because the grass was so high. I'm putting Pastor Omar on blast now. Pastor Omar was like, thanks. But I was so proud of him that he went and did that. Why? Because he woke up one day and said, you know what? I'm done being sedentary. I've been standing in one spot for so long that my boots grew roots, and I'm ready to start moving forward in my relationship with God, and we all need to have that same tenacity. Are you with me, church? The next point is breaking new ground. We want to break new ground. Mark chapter 16, verses 15, Jesus says, go. Everybody say go. Go into all the world. Everyone, I want you to do this to your neighbor. Say, all the world, like that. I love one entire row did it, and everyone else is like, I'm not about that life. I want everybody to look at your neighbor and say, all the world. Come on, have a little bit of fun. So we're going to do it together. We're going to do some actions, okay? Say, go. Into all the world and preach the gospel to everyone. We're going to do it one more time. Go into all the world and preach the gospel to everyone. I almost forgot that last action. I remember that last second. We're called to go into all the world. You know why he tells us to go into all the world and preach the gospel to everyone? Because a lot of times we get complacent and comfortable going to the same people, preaching the same gospel in the same area. Are you listening, church? We break new ground by going where no one's gone before, doing what nobody's done before, and reaching who no one has reached before. That's how we break new ground, church. We break it by going where nobody's gone before, doing what nobody's done before, and reaching who nobody's reached before. We're not a church that is content to stay in one spot. Listen, we've got 10 acres in downtown Lehigh. We got some room, okay? We could easily stay here and never move, but we need to go out into the streets. You need to be starting a Bible study somewhere. You need to be preaching to somebody on a street corner. You need to be praying for somebody at your workplace, and stop making excuses. Oh, Pastor Daniel, I don't know where to go. I don't know where to go. Where do I go to do it? Look, this is a map of Lehigh. You see how big Lehigh is? You guys know that Lehigh is about 100 square miles. You guys realize that if they built out every vacant lot in Lehigh, we would be the second largest city in Florida. You guys realize that we have a population in Lehigh that's greater than Fort Myers, and you guys think Fort Myers is all the junk? No, they are smaller than us. That's our baby brother over there. Lehigh's got some room. Lehigh's got some people. They are putting up houses everywhere. Everywhere. I live in the middle of the forest, and they put 3 houses on my street. Ain't nobody live on my street. Every lot looks like Pastor Omar's yard, and there's nothing there, and they're putting houses out there in the middle of nowhere. I'm like, there's other places you can build. But they're putting people everywhere. There is somewhere for you to go all around our city. What you need to start doing is you need to start looking at a map of Lehigh and saying, God, where do you want me to go? How about there? God, how about that spot? God, you know what? They need a Bible study over there. God, you know what? I saw somebody over there that needs some prayer. Hey, God, tell me where to go. God, lead me. Oh, the library? Library's a great place to tell people about Jesus. You just need to start moving. Are you with me? You just need to start moving. These are your footsteps. This is action. God's saying, go. Where? I don't care. Just go. Because when you go, you're going to encounter somebody that needs the gospel. Are you with me, church? Churches are way too content to do things the way that they've always done them, and that needs to end. Okay? We need to break new ground. I was watching a video of a very, very large church, and I was watching, they had like this worship event, and I promise you guys, if they would, it was a high quality video, so I knew it was recent because it was in HD. But I was like, if you would have shot that video on a VHS tape and showed it to me, I would have swore up and down on my mother's life that it was shot in the 70s or 80s. I would have swore. Why? Because the clothes that they were wearing were from the 80s. The songs that they were singing were from the 80s. And everybody that was standing on the stage singing, I promise you, has been standing on that stage singing since the 80s. Nothing's changed, nothing's progressed. There's nothing new. Now, there's nothing inherently wrong with that. If that's how you do church, that's great, but there has to be a church that's willing to break new ground. There has to be a church that's willing to say, you know what? Nobody dresses like that anymore, so maybe pastor getting up wearing track pants is not necessarily a bad thing because people are coming into church wearing track pants, and I don't want them to come in here and feel like they don't have a place or that they don't belong or that they don't fit in. Are you with me, church? We got to break some new ground. And I'm not up here saying that wearing like track pants, that's not like that's not the thing that gets people saved, but we gotta not be afraid to go there. Are you with me? We gotta not be afraid. Okay, if it takes a little bit of smoke to get a young person to come in and see some lights and stuff like that, and they're like, hey, this place is cool. It doesn't look like the church I grew up with. I'm willing to give it a chance. Fantastic. We broke some new ground because we did something different. There are 150 churches, over 150 churches in Lehigh, and as far as I know, we are unique in the sense that our structure and our approach is geared to be relevant as possible to a young generation. Now, that's not at the exclusion of the older generation. Because something I was super excited about was there was a lady in the church that came and met with me this past week. She's in her 80s, and she came up to me and was like, Pastor Daniel, I'm so excited to have a young pastor and be in a church filled with young people because I see opportunities all around me to mentor these young girls and these young ladies and tell them what I've gone through and where I've come from and help them go further than I went. And so I am privileged and blessed to be in a church that's reaching a younger generation because I have somebody to pour into. I was blessed by that conversation, you guys, because everybody has a place, but I want to be a church that people can come in off the street and not feel like they don't belong, because the number one objection that people have to going to church is they don't want to feel judged, and I want to have people be able to come in no matter where they're at in their walk in life and be able to encounter Jesus. We're unique in that sense, and I want us to continue to do that. We have to be open to innovation, to inspiration, to improvisation. We have to be open to doing things differently. There's a church that I really love called Life Church. Pastor Gregory, they make the Bible app. If you guys read the Bible on your phone, it's probably because of his church. And they have a slogan in their church that we'll do everything short of sin to get the gospel to somebody. So that means we're not going to sin to do it, but anything else we'll do. We'll act stupid, we got to act stupid. We'll act crazy if we got to act crazy. We'll get a little loud if we got a little loud, if we have to get a little loud. We're going to do whatever it takes to bring the gospel to people. But most Christians, we want to be comfortable. And so we come to church and we get offended because we're not comfortable, and we miss out on the fact that we're trying to bring the broadest amount of people in, because there's 150 other churches that you can go to feel comfortable. And I'm not putting them down at all, because I'm not about that. There's some incredible churches in Lehigh, but there are a lot of them that exist for people that want to be comfortable in church. And again, it's not necessarily a wrong thing. It's just not what we're called to. We're called to reach people that are broken and that are lost, and we're going to do whatever it takes to be that. We're going to do whatever it takes to be that. We have to be open to doing things that make us uncomfortable in order to break new ground. In Luke chapter 14, verses 23, it says, then the master told his servant, go. Everybody say go. Go out into the roads and the country lanes and the hedges and compel them to come in so that my house will be full. He says the country lanes and the hedges. Why? Because he wants you to go to the places you would least consider. You would least consider. See, a lot of times, our church is, dude, I'm turned around. Our church is about here. A lot of times we're very comfortable in this spot. But what Jesus is saying, hey, I want you to go into the places that nobody is. I want you to go into the spots that people aren't thinking about. I want you to go into the areas that people avoid. And when you do, I want you to be compelling. I want you to be compelling. How? You know, I preached a sermon several months back about Hudson Taylor. He was a British missionary to China, and he was a man of God, and he wanted to be a minister, and he realized that there's so many churches in England. He's like, I want to go where no one's going, so he went to China. When he got to China, he realized that any missionaries that made it to China stayed in the coastal cities, and all of the European mission churches that were started in China catered to European people. And Hudson Taylor said, I didn't come to China to reach my countrymen. If I wanted to reach my countrymen, I would have stayed in my country. I came to China to reach the Chinese, so I'm going to go where no one else is going because I want to break some new ground. So Hudson Taylor was the first to go into the interior of the nation, and he went into the villages, and he lived with the Chinese people. And when he went, he tried to be compelling by dressing the way that they dressed, adopting their customs and their culture, and cutting his hair the way that they cut it, and eating the food that they ate, and doing whatever they did so that he could bring the gospel to them exactly where they are, and they wouldn't look at him as somebody that was different or above them. They would look at him as somebody that was just like them, that God made a difference in, because he was ready and prepared to sacrifice whatever he needed to sacrifice to go where nobody was going and do what no one was doing and reach who nobody else was reaching. That's what he was about, church. That's what he was about, and we have to be about the same thing. In 1 Thessalonians chapter 1, verses 8, it says, and now the word of the Lord is ringing out from you to people everywhere, even beyond Immokalee and Arcadia. It's in the Bible, it says that. This is the New Lehigh translation. For wherever we go, everybody say go. We find people telling us about your faith in God, and we don't even need to tell them about it. Listen how powerful that is. The Apostle Paul is saying, listen, I'm running out of places to be a missionary because every time I show up to a town, I throw a dart at a map, and then I show up at Florida Gulf Coast University in Buckingham, and they're like, we already got a Bible study here. I'm like, come on. I go to Immokalee and there's a church there, and then I go to Arcadia and there's a church there. Why? Because you guys are going ahead of me, and I'm having to struggle to figure out where to go. You know what I hope for, church? I hope that we become so evangelistic and we break so much new ground that there comes a day where I'm sitting with the church staff and I'm sitting with a map and I'm like, I got no other place to put a victory group. I can't put another Bible study in this city. We are bursting at the seams. I got to get a bigger map. I got to get an atlas. I got to get a globe, and I got to start searching for places that we can plant churches where we haven't gone yet. That's what I'm hoping for, church, that we begin to go and break new ground. You know, it's funny, we talk about evangelism a lot, and a while ago, there was a gentleman in the church that came to me and said, Pastor Daniel, I want to start doing some evangelism ministry. And you know what I told him? I said, okay, go. Amen. And you know what's so funny? People come to me all the time, Pastor Daniel, I want to start this ministry. And my response is automatically, do it. And you know what usually the response I hear is, well, are you going to help me? I did not come to you. You came to me. You said God told me to start this. If God told you to start it, you got my blessing, go do it. Are you with me? God didn't call me to do that. I put my hand on you, I bless you, go. And this man was one of the first people that came to me and said, God called me to do this ministry. And I looked at him and said, go. And he said, okay. And I want to show you a video real quick. Can you guys show this video?
To people that need it.
You know what's awesome about that video? Ed's actually sitting here today. Ed, can you stand up and wave your hand real quick? Ed is sitting in church today because a group of men got together and said, we better go. Let's go. And they threw a dart at a map and said, Winn-Dixie parking lot? Sounds about good. And little did they know that the point of that dart went right through Ed's skull. And Ed is sitting in church today because people went. Because people went. We move forward, we break new ground. I'm coming to a close this morning, but I want to close up with the third point. We create momentum. What does momentum mean? That's funny. I went into the dictionary and I wrote out the definition of momentum. I was going to share it with you guys, and Ashley's like, that is way too complicated. She's like, you need to break it down in layman's terms. Momentum essentially means that your mass is equal to your velocity, okay? So it's something that is moving, and the speed at which it's moving is equal to its mass. And I want to illustrate this morning. So I want to have Joel. Joel, can you come up here real quick? I'm Joel. Have Joel get up here. Now, Joel is really awesome. Joel, he helps out in so many areas in the church. His family has been coming for, how long have you guys been coming, Joel? 8 years? Long time. They've been around for a long, long time. I love this man. I love his family, his wife, his daughter. They're incredible people. I love them. But Joel's a big dude, right? How tall are you, Joel? 6'4"? What size shoe do you wear, bro? 14s. 6'4", wears size 14s, okay? Joel's a big guy, okay? I want to see something this morning. Ashley, can you come up here? And Nicole, come here, girl. I know some of these girls come up here. Now, Joel, I want you to try and move forward, but just be standing still. And girls, I want you to prevent him from moving forward. Let's come over here so we can make sure it gets up on the live stream too. I'll make sure everyone can see. All right. So I want you to just try and just move forward. So girls, I want you to put your hands on Joel, and I want you to like brace yourselves, put your legs, do whatever you got to do, but don't let him move, okay? Put your hands, go, get up there. He doesn't mind. Okay, Joel, go. You can try a little harder, Joel. Come on, let's try. Go. No, just try a little bit harder. Put a little bit of force behind it. Awesome. Wow. Okay, they actually did better than I thought that they would. You know what I mean? She weighs about like 87 cents, you know what I mean? She weighs about as much as like a sack of nickels, you know what I mean? But like, they were able to stop Joel from being able to move. You want to know why? Because Joel was standing still. Joel was standing still, so he's not in motion, so it's harder for him to pick up momentum because he's stationary. And as Christians, listen to me, if you're staying stationary, the enemy doesn't need to do a lot of work to keep you from moving. Are you with me? It doesn't require a lot of energy to keep you standing still. But girls, I want to try something a little bit different. Can you girls come over here for me for a second? I just want you girls, just stand here, turn around. Just stand there. Just stand close together like you guys like each other. That's cool. It's just, and Joel, if you don't mind, can you just come here for a second? I just want to talk to you. Joel, I want you to run at them. And I want you to run as fast as you can. And you ever play any sports in your life? It's been a while, but you did before, right? So I want you to put your shoulder down when you run at them. I want you just like that. And what I want you to think is I want you to think the word bulldozer. Just get that mental image. Like, and I don't know, Joel, you're from up north, right, originally? So have you ever seen like a snowplow? That's kind of the effect that I'm looking for. So I want you to run as fast as you can at them, and just try and see if they can stop you this time. Let's go. Go. Yo, those girls ran fast. They're like, I love you, Pastor Daniel, but this is the extent of my commitment to this church right now. In fact, I'm pretty sure that they're just going to run until they find a new church, you know? They're going to be going down Homestead. Are they open? Let's go in there. I'm feeling the voice of God call me to this nice Lutheran church. Why do you think the girls ran? See, it wasn't intimidating for them to stand in front of Joel when he was stationary, but when he's running at them full speed, and you got those size 14, 6'4", running at you with his shoulder down, listen, it's a lot scarier, and they're not about to stand in front of him then. And I want to let you know that the church itself is not intimidating when it's not moving, but when we have a church of 500 people on the move, the enemy better watch out, because once we build momentum, we are not easily stopped. Once we start going, and we got the power of the Holy Spirit on us, the enemy better get out of the way, because we're coming through. Are you listening? We're going to break some new ground. We're going to move forward, and we're going to create some momentum, church. Give God a shout of praise in this house. Come on. Listen, the church in the book of Acts learned this lesson. They learned to go. We see them when Jesus ascended into heaven. There was 120 people in the church in the book of Acts, 120 people. And when Jesus ascended to heaven, the Bible says that they stood still and looked at the clouds. They didn't move. It took 2 angels to show up and say, listen, he's not coming back right now. You guys got to move. And you know what? They moved all the way into an upper room, and they stayed there and locked the door because they weren't ready to move. But then the Bible says the Holy Spirit came down upon them in the day of Pentecost, and he came with power. And when the Holy Spirit came upon them, the Bible says that they busted open the locked doors of the upper room, and they began to flood into their city, and they began to tell everybody that would listen in every corner of Jerusalem and Judea and Samaria and even to the ends of the earth. That one didn't stick, but that's all right. And they began to tell everybody about Jesus, and then the Apostle Peter gets up with the illest sermon ever written, and he preaches a sermon, and 3,000 people get saved in one day. Why? Because that church began to move. They began to go forward. They began to break new ground. They began to create momentum. And listen, that church built up so much momentum that you're here today because they got up and they began to move. You are a Christian in Victory Church in Lehigh Acres because 2,000 years ago, 120 people stopped being sedentary. They got out of their upper room. They got out of their church pews, and they began to flood the streets of their city and preach the gospel to every man, woman, and child. And they began to create so much momentum that the enemy's been trying for 2,000 years to stop what God started, and it still keeps going forward. Amen. Come on now. It's time for us to move.